Archaeologists just discovered something in Slovenia that shouldn't have existed not only in Slovenia but in entire Europe. Massive stone walls stretching across mountainsides, built specifically to trap and hunt wild animals. We're talking about barriers up to 3 feet tall and nearly 2 feet thick, running for hundreds of meters across alpine landscapes. Radiocarbon dating reveals they're between 4,000 and 10,000 years old, built during the Mesolithic and Neolithic periods, when humans were transitioning from hunter-gatherers to farmers. But here's what makes this discovery absolutely groundbreaking. Until now, this hunting technique was only known from the Arabian Peninsula. Nobody thought ancient Europeans built massive stone structures just to funnel wild deer into kill zones. We were wrong. And these aren't the only ones. Researchers believe hundreds more walls are hidden across Slovenia's forests, waiting to be found. The discovery that changed everything. Let's start with what they actually found. In Slovenia's Javorniki-Snežnik mountain range near the border with Croatia and Italy, archaeologists discovered 2 stone wall structures called konnik and hodnik. These aren't random piles of rocks. We're looking at deliberately constructed barriers measuring up to 3 feet high and nearly 2 feet thick, built from limestone blocks stacked without mortar. Janeja Ojibeg, a bioarchaeologist who led the research while at the University of Ljubljana, described the moment of realization. When I saw the structures in person for the first time, I was astonished. The walls are still standing after thousands of years. The Kutnik wall runs 164 feet long. The Hajnik wall stretches even further at 459 feet. But length alone doesn't tell the full story. These walls were positioned strategically across natural game trails that red deer would have used for thousands of years. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal found within the structures revealed construction dates between 4,000 and 10,000 years ago. That spans from the Mesolithic period, when humans were still primarily hunter-gatherers, through the Neolithic, when farming was beginning to spread across Europe. The older dates are particularly significant. 10,000 years ago, Europe was still emerging from the last ice age. Forests were reclaiming the landscape, and somewhere in Slovenia, hunter-gatherers were organizing labor forces to build stone infrastructure for hunting. The hunting system worked. Now let's talk about the hunting strategy itself, because it's sophisticated. The walls weren't meant to completely block animals. Instead, they funneled them. Uliberg explained, the walls would have been constructed to guide wild animals, such as red deer, towards specific locations where hunters could ambush and kill them more easily. Picture this. Red deer migrate seasonally through mountain passes, following the same routes generation after generation. Ancient hunters identified these migration corridors, then built stone barriers along the sides, creating artificial channels that narrowed gradually. The deer, following their instinctual paths, would naturally flow between the walls. At the narrowest points, what archaeologists call killing zones, hunters waited. With nowhere for the animals to escape, archers or spearmen could take down entire herds with minimal risk. But here's what demonstrates true engineering thinking. The walls didn't need to be tall. At just 3 feet high, a deer could theoretically jump them. But deer psychology works against that. When moving as a herd through unfamiliar barriers, they follow the path of least resistance rather than jumping obstacles. The walls exploited animal behavior, not just physical containment. The research team also discovered what they call blinds, smaller stone structures where hunters could hide while waiting for game to pass. These weren't improvised positions. They were deliberately built infrastructure, positioned for optimal ambush angles. This wasn't opportunistic hunting. This was landscape-scale engineering designed for predictable, repeatable meat acquisition. Why this changes what we can know about Europe. Here's where the discovery becomes revolutionary. Until now, this type of stone hunting infrastructure was only documented in one place, the Arabian Peninsula. Structures called kites, named for their shape when viewed from above, have been found across Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and neighboring countries. Those kites date back thousands of years and were used to trap gazelles using the exact same funneling technique. Archaeologists assume this was a regional adaptation to Middle Eastern geography and wildlife. The idea that Europeans independently developed the same technology using similar construction methods to hunt different species was never seriously considered. Berg was direct about the implications. These structures represent a rare example of prehistoric hunting architecture in Europe and challenge our understanding of how ancient communities interacted with their environment. But the Slovenian walls aren't just rare, they might be unique in European archaeology. No comparable structures have been definitively identified anywhere else on the continent. Wolfheim, an experimental archaeologist at the University of Tübingen who wasn't involved in the study, noted the significance. If confirmed, this would be the first evidence of this hunting technique being used in Europe during this time period. That "if confirmed" is important. The research team is still working to definitively prove the wall's purpose, but the evidence is compelling. The structures align perfectly with known deer migration routes. They include hunting blinds, and their design matches Arabian hunting kites in every functional way except the target species. Let's talk about what it actually takes to build hundreds of feet of stone walls across mountainous terrain. Moving limestone blocks, some weighing dozens of pounds across alpine landscapes, requires planning. Multiple people need to gather stone, transport it to construction sites, and stack it according to a predetermined design. That implies coordinated labor, not just a single hunting party, but community-level cooperation. And here's what makes the timeline fascinating. The oldest sections date to 10,000 years ago, during the Mesolithic. That's before agriculture transformed European societies. These were still mobile hunter-gatherer groups, yet they invested significant effort into permanent hunting infrastructure. That suggests something important. They returned to these locations repeatedly, probably seasonally, timing their presence to coincide with deer migrations. The walls represent long-term territorial knowledge understanding where animals moved and when, then engineering the landscape to exploit that knowledge year after year. The construction also continued into the Neolithic period when farming was spreading across Europe. Even as agriculture provided new food sources, communities still invested labor in maintaining and potentially expanding these hunting structures. That tells us hunting remained culturally and nutritionally important even as subsistence strategies diversified. Berg pointed out another crucial detail. The walls also demonstrate the ingenuity and resourcefulness of prehistoric peoples in adapting to their surroundings. They didn't just hunt animals, they redesigned the landscape itself to make hunting more efficient. What else is out there? Here's where this gets really interesting. These probably aren't the only ones. Slovenia's forests cover roughly 60% of the country, one of the highest percentages in Europe. Beneath that dense canopy, stone structures can remain invisible for millennia. The Kečnik and Hadnik walls were only discovered because researchers were specifically looking for them, following up on local folklore and historical mentions of mysterious stone formations. The research team believes similar structures almost certainly exist elsewhere in Slovenia and potentially across neighboring regions of Croatia, Italy, and Austria. After all, red deer ranged across the entire Alps. If Slovenian hunters developed this technique, there's no reason to think they were unique. Modern technology might help find them. LiDAR scanning, the same technology that revealed lost cities in the Amazon, can penetrate forest canopy and detect subtle stone structures beneath vegetation. A systematic LiDAR survey of Slovenia's mountain ranges could potentially reveal dozens or hundreds of additional hunting walls. And here's something that should make us reconsider other archaeological sites. How many stone structures across Europe have been misidentified? Field walls that archaeologists assumed were agricultural boundaries might actually be ancient hunting infrastructure. Collapsed stone formations dismissed as natural rockfalls might be deliberate constructions weathered by 10,000 years of alpine winters. The Slovenian discovery teaches us that absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Just because we haven't found something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It might mean we weren't looking properly or we misunderstood what we were seeing. So here's what we know. Ancient Europeans spanning from Mesolithic hunter-gatherers to early Neolithic farmers built massive stone walls across Slovenian mountains to funnel wild red deer into killing zones. These structures are between 4,000 and 10,000 years old, representing the first confirmed evidence of this hunting technique anywhere in Europe. The walls required coordinated labor, sophisticated understanding of animal behavior, and long-term territorial knowledge. They functioned for thousands of years, remaining important even as agriculture began transforming European societies, and we've probably only found the first examples. Slovenia's forests likely hide dozens more. Neighboring countries might have them too. And archaeologists across Europe are now looking at old stone structures with fresh eyes, wondering what they might have missed. This discovery does something important. It reminds us that our ancestors weren't simple. They engineered their environments with remarkable sophistication, developing technologies we assumed belonged to other continents, solving problems we're only now beginning to understand. 10,000 years ago, somewhere in the mountains of what's now Slovenia, hunters looked at a deer migration route and thought, we can build something here that will feed our people for generations. And then they did. What else did they build that we haven't found yet? Drop your thoughts in the comments.